Let's start. Welcome. I'm super excited to be here and super honored to start now this JAM session. And I will tell you a little story about how I created a JAMstack project by kind of like accident. And I'm not only talking about the JAMstack tonight, so JavaScript APIs and markup, but I will also talk about a bit CSS. So, but first, who am I? I'm Vanessa. I'm a web developer since I can think of it, since 11 years. Since I was 11 years old. And currently I work as a senior product engineer at Schrader in Munich. And if you now think, what is this for an amazing background color I have here? So to get an inspiration for coloring for my slides, I went to the Script'19 site. And then I looked at the image, so I inspected the element. And the first thing I saw was this amazing semantic HTML on the web page. So please make an applause for the heroes which made an accessible web page for us. And then I thought, okay, this color is called hot pink. I want hot pink for my slides, and I also want to have the Dodger blue for my slides. So, serious now. When I'm working, I'm used to work on two kinds of projects. So the one kind is legacy projects. So these 10-year-old code bases, monoliths, jQuery, everything. And on the other hand, I have a project with microfront and microservices, AWS, Kubernetes, Docker, everything. So we have several people there doing all of the DevOps stuff for me. So I don't have any clue how it works. It just works anyhow with Kubernetes, Docker things. But what I actually haven't done in a long time is to create a website. I really haven't done it in a long time. So for the life balance, work-life balance, I really like to drink wine. And I also listen to podcasts, for example, to Working Draft, who we have here tonight, thank you. And I really enjoy to do the wine and the podcast together. So last year on November, on this Wednesday, I was listening to a Lifeline podcast. So what is that? You will order 3 bottles of wine, listen to the live podcast and drink at home and chat with the people in the chat. That's awesome. There was one problem. We ordered 3 bottles of wine for 2 persons, so it was kind of expensive evening. And all of the 3 bottles were like... So I've decided I want to make my own wine podcast. And after this decision, nothing happened for weeks. Until I saw on the first day that on Saturday there's a wine event, the biggest wine event happening in Munich. And of course I'm not able to create a whole episode and put it to iTunes in 2.5 days, but maybe I can create a website, because if I want to have listeners to the podcast, I may show the website on my mobile phone to the attendees there to make some advertisement for myself. But I actually also didn't have 2.5 complete days because I was working, so I had 2 evenings and half a day to create a website, and I'm a web developer. I should know how to do that. And I was like, I can do this, I can do this. I know how I can do this, I know HTML. So. I sat down. What are my requirements? I don't have time. So I have to do something where I can really develop fast and quickly. If I want to show it on my mobile phones to people, I need to have it responsive. And what would be super cool and nice to have would be a headless CMS, because I don't want to write content. Other people can do this because I'm not good with words. What I absolutely don't need is a server or a database. No need for it, no time for it, no money for it. So I went and did a little research. I went to StaticChan, which is the top 100 static site generators there are, and there was Gatsby. Would be a valid choice, but I actually was a Vue developer, not a React developer, so I looked what else I can do. There's Middleman. Who knows Middleman? Yeah, good one. I've used Middleman like 5 or 6 years ago. It's the static site generator for Ruby. But I already know it, so I want to learn something new. Learn something new, there's HUBO. Golang, in 2.5 days, no, out. And when I was thinking, and I was stressy, and what do I do, my boyfriend was sitting next to me, and he was like, yeah, what is wrong with you front-enders today? Can you just write HTML, CSS, put it over an FTP client to the web? No, we don't do this anymore. I want to do something I can host on Netlify, because Netlify. So I looked further, and on StaticChan I also found Next. And I know Next because I'm a Vue.js developer, but I thought it was for server-side rendering and don't want to have a server. But what you can also do is to make a static-generated version of your page, put your files on GitHub and deploy it on Netlify. And then I Googled for the Headless CMS and boom, Storyblok. It was like all of my requirements are there. So let's talk about the JavaScript part of the JAMstack. I wanted to use Nextrace. If you have any questions, ask them him, because you have the pleasure to have one of the creators here today. What I want to do today is to talk about my user perspective, how I use Nextrace as a developer. And one thing, so the question is, why do you need a framework on top of the Vue.js framework? What you have is a feature, and there are a lot of features. I'm only talking about the ones that were important for my 2.5 days projects. You can have these pages directory. And every Vue single file component you put inside the pages directory will automatically be available on the web under the URL path. So if you have an index.vue in the pages directory, it will be the root landing page. If you have an imprint.vue in your pages directory, it will be like domain.com/imprint. So all of the router configuration is done for you. The router configuration is not complicated, but it costs time. So it's really important, if you don't have time, you don't want to think about going to your router.js file, importing the file, maybe some dynamic file where you have to write some functions, good one, and then adding it to an object or anything else. And what you also do have out of the box is transitions between page switches, and you also have this feature of scrolling to top, because I was developing everything on my big screen at home, and I wouldn't have seen that it actually, when I switch from index to imprint, that it wouldn't scroll up automatically, because if you work in old code bases, usually all of these things already are working, if they are not broken in the meanwhile, but I wouldn't have think of it. What you also have is two directory for assets, so for images, for example. Why is that good? The assets directory is webpacked. That means that only the images you will actually use in your HTML code, in your Vue files, will be on the build destination files. Everything else will not be part of your bundle you ship to the user. What's good about it? I didn't have time, but I also couldn't decide between hero images. So I had like 10 hero images and was just, time right for that. And so I was just switching through the images, which I like best. But I actually didn't want to delete them and thinking of deleting them before shipping them. So this is already handled for me. I need the static folder because I also have the XML feed for the podcast later, which I don't use on my Vue directory, but I have to have it available on the internet. So that's another really good thing to have in Nextrace. And now it comes in 3 different modes: in the server-side rendering mode, statically generated mode, and in the single page app mode. So server-side rendered is, of course, if you have a server running. Statically generated is the thing that I needed. So it gets your static generated part either made on your local host, or if you deploy it over GitHub, over Netlify, it will statically generate your web page without having any server running on production. And then you can always just use it as a single page application. Why would you do this instead of then switching just back to Vue.js? The point is the context switches. If you're used to writing Nux code without having to configure the routes, just having the pages directory and a static directory and an assets directory, then you don't want to switch and back to Vue.js and rethinking it. So if you use it as a single page application mode, you won't have any more kilobytes shipped with it. It will just be reduced, but you can still use the pages directory and so on. So if you want to change the mode for Nux.js, you can go to the Nux config.js. And here on top you see the mode, where you have the SPA for a single page application or universal for the server-side rendering mode. And then I also saw this key head. And I'm sitting there, head, SEO. Oh yes, I need a title, I need a meta description. Nobody was there but Next to tell me that I should forget about these things that I usually don't think about when writing microfrontends or very old code bases, because you have all the titles already there. But if you still forget them, you will just have the name of the package just as a title. And so without having to do anything else, I had just the reminder to add some title and meta description, because I actually wanted to tweet on the way to the Wine conference or event about the website, and wouldn't I have done the reminder and filling out the keywords for the head data, I wouldn't have, I don't know what happens without SEO data. I think just nothing. You have just the URL and a blank page or blank image. So that was the JavaScript part. Next, I will come to the CSS part. And a friend of mine once said, writing no CSS might be the best CSS at all. I don't want to say who it was, because it's a complicated message. And I really like to write CSS, but I also know that it takes me a much higher amount of time than writing JavaScript, because I can't decide between pixels, or I did something wrong, or float left, float right, position absolute, and so on and so forth. Or do I use Flexbox or Grid CSS? So I decided to go with the original author was Adam Wethan, and he described it as a utility-first CSS framework for rapid UI development. Rapid UI development, that's what I'm needing, because I'm already on the second day, evening, and I'm tired. I'm drinking. So that is a sentence which sounds promising, but is it real? Let's have a look at what is utility-first CSS, so utility-based CSS. What you do have, instead of component classes where you wrap all of your styles together, like creating a box with 300 pixel height, 200 pixel, padding here, margin there, you add all of these utility classes of CSS inside your HTML. So here, for example, you have the background white, you have rounded for these rounded corners, you have P/-6 for a padding of 6, you have block for display block, a height and a width and rounded full, and as you can see in this you can see here I have a hover effect with the hover pseudo element, and then I think, no, this red color isn't working for me, so I just go into the Tailwind CSS, add a new primary color, the hot pink I hadn't before there, adding the text primary here, and I can immediately use the primary new color for background and text. But as you might have seen in this quick video, I just added the color. I didn't do anything to prepare the text primary class. I didn't do anything to create the background primary class. So this happened immediately. And together with Next, when you use Next with Tailwind, you have hot module replacement, and it just works out of the box together. And this was rapid, and I needed fast development. But you may run into one problem. If you have utility-based CSS, that are a lot of CSS classes, because you need for padding 1, padding 2, padding 3, Polygon, padding 10, padding 12, margin 1, margin 2, and so on and so forth. Every color, every text color, every background color, border color, combination you might think of. So Webpack was warning me, hey, your app is kind of big, do something about it. But also for that problem, there is a solution. And this solution is Purge CSS. Purge CSS is a tool which screens your HTML files and looks up which CSS classes are you really using in the HTML files. So it's kind of like the assets folder which gets webpacked and it looks up which images are you really using. Purge CSS is doing the same for CSS. So if I'm using the padding 6 and padding 12 inside of my view components, only these two paddings will be in the destination files, only in the bundle, only in the kilobytes I will ship to the user. And the good thing is that happened on November 2018, and I had to install the Nux Purge CSS by myself and think of it. But nowadays there is this module system of Nux.js, and you can have the Nux.js Tailwind CSS module, and if you use that, then you have automatically also this Nux Purge CSS included inside of this, and you might not even have ever thought about all of these other CSS classes to get rid of them before shipping them to the user. So, and with using now Purge CSS, and I really didn't have to do anything about except npm install and adding it to the Nux config.js, I reduced the size of my bundle from 330 to 34. Oh, 30 is a hard word. So, wow, like 10% from before. That's amazing. And I know I have an image problem here. As I said before, I still decided on images, on hero images. So now that was JavaScript, that was CSS, and now we have APIs and markup left. So I went on Storyblock because it's the headless CMS for Next, and I created a web page with Contentful also like 4 years ago, and I had the problem that it's kind of difficult if you don't have these things like hot module placement, because I was creating a headline and a description and so on and so forth, but I wasn't the editor for this website. So I really had to describe for the title tag, okay, here please don't write more than 30 characters because the CSS is only possible if you wrap it inside 30 kilobytes, because otherwise it would be in 2 lines, and 2 lines is not working with the CSS I wrote for that. But Storyblock also has the possibility to have the live preview of it, and so the editors can immediately see what is happening and not like having to create the draft, publish the draft, go to a staging server and see it there. So I wanted to try it out. And I got to Storyblock and I created a space. And obviously, like a professional is doing it, I called it test. Not even hello world, that was too long. And then it was, Storyblock was telling me what I should do. So it wasn't a blank page and I wasn't lost, so it told me, create a demo page. Oh no, we've already done this for you. Oh cool, because I don't have time. And then I clicked on the home page that was already there for me. Then I had not only the home page, Storyblock comes with these pre-configured projects for like Nux.js, Gatsby, Next, plain JavaScript, Vue.js, a lot of things. And you can now either download just a whole project that is working and running, or you can go through all of the tutorials which are basically already implementing whatever you will need. And that was like, okay, I don't have to do anything, everything is there. But let's be honest, I didn't add Storyblock content in these 2.5 days, but I've created the bridge between. But then I got the idea, because Storyblock has another feature that's for image resizing and image optimizations. So I kind of misused the headless CMS only for images, because as you may remember, my image was quite huge. But if I put the image to Storyblock, I can say, okay, I just want to have a quality of 60 for JPEG, something, optimizations, and for mobile devices, I only need like quality of still 60, but maybe another dimension. And so I used the headless CMS only for my images, and therefore I could reduce the size of my project from 2.4 megabyte, then adding Purge CSS to 2.1 megabyte, and then I still had this huge image, and then I got under 1 megabyte, and I was like, okay, nice, now let's make an experiment. As I said before, I was working in legacy code bases, so there's one thing you don't do when working in these 10-year-old code bases. You don't run audits and you don't go to Lighthouse. But I did it, and this was the result. And I was like, Thank you. And the exciting thing was, I was really shy before because I was working as a web developer, but was so afraid to create a website, and I did this, and then it was working, and I had everything green, and this was like this breakthrough moment for me. It was like, okay, I'm really a web developer, I can do this. So I actually did it. I launched it before the event, and what I didn't do was eating. I had no time for eating. I still decided on hero images, so I just got into this wine event and then drank 1 glass of wine, and I was so drunk I forgot absolutely to show anyone my website. I could have, but I forgot it. The thing about the JAMstack now here is, I didn't know that I made a JAMstack until later I realized that. It was not the situation like, here's a JAMstack, what are you going to do with it? I didn't have this, I need a project, I need an idea. I had a problem, and by accident the JAMstack solved it for me completely as I like it to have. And I write a lot of JavaScript, and I wrote so much CSS in my life, and I used Photoshop so many times to just optimize some images, and I do these things, these repeating things all over again, writing the router all over again, and all of the other things. And the very amazing thing about the JAMstack is that someone else is handling that problem already for you. You have image optimizations, you have content, you have your APIs, you have your bundlers, you have Webpack pre-configured. I don't have to pre-configure Webpack, thank you. So that was my adventure with Next, Tailwind CSS, Netlify, and Storyblock, which kind of seem all have a fable for these greenish, bluish colors. I don't know if there's a connection there. And because I just wanted to say, they don't pay me for this, I'm not hired. I just really actually love to use these tools, but you can get a Patreon of the podcast, and if you pay me $10 a month, I will buy a bottle up to 100 euro and just drink it. But it's on German, I'm sorry. But sorry, the podcast is on German because I don't know if dry and fruity are the correct English translations. So I think I made up some time. Thank you and have a lovely evening.